Hi everyone, this is Memento G here. Today I bring you a Seaside Bologna build guide, but this time it will be in-depth. What I mean by in-depth is that I will bring you 2 build recommendations. I will also recommend artifacts and specific numbers on what stats you want to aim for and what substats you would require for each piece. So I must give a shout out to Leo. So Leo is a friend from Korea. Leo created the outline of this content and we discussed closely to decide on what stats are realistic, yet also demanding enough for people to aim at. So I hope this is helpful, especially for those people who are not yet sure as to what numbers you want to hit. As I will talk later on, numbers are important because in many cases, what matters is numbers, not set options. Because with different set options, you can reach the same number. And in our view, that's the same thing. So, a brief outline. First, I'll explain Seaside Bologna's stats. What's distinct about her stats. Second of all, we will recommend 2 builds. One will be an attack and HP set build. Another will be a speed and crit set build. After that, thirdly, we will go over artifact recommendations. Finally, we will recommend and set out certain goal stats you want to aim for, and also what specific stat numbers, substat numbers that are required for those goal stats. Yellow letters are offense-related stats, green letters will be defense-related stats. So just to keep that in mind. So first, Seaside Bologna stat analysis. She's a Gemini, which means she gets bonus stats on effectiveness and attack. So as you can see, she has relatively high effectiveness and attack compared to other rangers. Now this is important for her because both attack and effectiveness matter to Seaside Bologna in her builds. Depending on how you build her, she can be quite versatile. Aside from effect resistance, all stats are meaningful. This means 2 things. First of all, it might be easy to build her because she uses up a lot of stats that might not be strictly required for other characters. The flip side of that is, of course, she might be pretty difficult to build because there are so many stats you want to aim for. Recommended build number 1. Attack and HP set. We personally thought that this was a bit more easier for you to acquire in terms of the set options and also the specific stats that you will have to reach that will come on later. With this, your attack is increased by 413 and your HP is increased by 794. Of course, remember that this is based on 85 level item standards. For right side main stats, we recommend having 1 HP percentage, 2 attack percentage main stats. Now, the reason I say these are interchangeable is because HP and attack can go on all these items. It can either go on neck, ring, or boot. So these are interchangeable. Again, bringing us back to the earlier point. What matters is the total number that you're trying to reach, not the specific sets or where these main stats are going. Now for artifact recommendation, I'm sure it's clear for a lot of you that Rengar Special Drink is dominantly the best artifact for her, but I know a lot of you don't have it. So even though my later stat numbers will be based on a plus 15 Rengar Special Drink, I bring 3 artifact recommendations. Rosa Hergana is always a viable option. Bloodstone, I'm seeing more people using Bloodstones on SSB these days. And even though this new Pavel artifact, Dux Noctis, am I saying it right? Anyways, even though this is not out, I think this can potentially work for her because this increases the attack of Seaside Bologna, but we'll have to see. Now here are the total stats without substats, which means this is the stat you will get for Seaside Bologna without any substats. So if you have 0 substats and all the items that I recommended earlier, you'll have this stat. You'll have 6.6k attack, 12k HP, 114 speed, defense 871, and crit chance, crit damage, effectiveness, all basically. To explain, this set is used for PvP arena counter against enemy SSBs. To avoid stacking enemy Seaside Bellona's S2, we lower her speed. That's why she doesn't have any speed items on her. Now also, because Rainguard's artifact damage scales with your attack stat, we invest in attack. That's why she goes with an attack set. Also, the reason for the HP set is Seaside Bellona versus Seaside Bellona fights are usually pretty prolonged, which means you need to bear all the hits. So you need sufficient HP and defense. So that explains the HP set. Now let's go into the specific goal stats and how much substat is required for each piece in average. So there's 2 things I want to note about the goal stats. First of all, we aimed to make it pretty high enough that it will be demanding for especially early or mid-game players to build, but at the same time, it probably won't be satisfactory for endgame players who are probably going over 16k HP, over 4.5k attack. But again, this is a guidepost, and we're pretty sure if you're able to reach these stats, you can use it for a lot of purposes, and of course mainly for PvP against Seaside Bellonas. The goal stat for attack is 4k. The HP we aim for 14k. Speed, as I noted earlier, you don't need it. It only gets in your way because it just stacks up the enemy Seaside Bellona's S2. You need decent amount of defense. You don't need high crit chance and crit damage because the damage dealt by this SSB is not crit, but the scaled attack with your Rain Guard's drink. You need high effectiveness because with high effectiveness, Seaside Bellona can give death breaks and also unhealables and unbuffables, which is critical against your fight against enemy Seaside Bellonas, or for that matter, any other team that you're fighting. Now here's a breakdown of the required substats. So, as we saw earlier in the first slide, this is 3.6k is a basic stat without any substats. This was the HP, this was the defense, and this was the effectiveness. As you see, we need to fill up 340 attacks, 1.8k HP, 229 defense, and 37% effectiveness. These are the numbers that you want to fill with your substats. Now, you can fill your attack with 4 pieces. You can fill your HP with 5 pieces, your defense with 6 pieces, and your effectiveness with 6 pieces. And if you average that out into percentages, your attack percentage has to be an average of 7% per piece. HP has to be an average of 7% per piece, defense has to be 7% per piece, and effectiveness has to be 6% per piece. You might have noticed that these are not very demanding numbers. Now this is important because again, we don't want this to be so demanding that early and mid-game players can't achieve it. But at the same time, we also want it to be decent enough so that once you reach these stats, you can use it for the required purposes. To explain the number of pieces, why this can't go up to 6 or why this can go down to 4. This is the main rule that probably most of you know, but some of you might not. So you can't have the same main stat with your substat. For example, a boot with an attack percent main stat can't have attack percent substats on it. Or another example would be, if you have a boot with a flat attack main stat, you can't have flat attack substats on it, okay? That's why you have 4 pieces for attack substats and and 5 pieces for HP substats. So whenever you're enhancing or crafting gear, you want to have this rough average in your mind. And also this is important because by knowing this number, it will probably save you from throwing away gear that you might throw out prematurely simply because you don't think it's high enough in your standards. Because again, who defines high? What fits your purposes is what matters, right? So again, remember these average stats and try to fit your subsets accordingly. The second recommended build is a speed and crit set. Now this is an offensive build. You have speed and you also have crit chance with your basic set options. Again, it's 85 level item standard. And main stats are less interchangeable than build 1. Let me explain why. You need a crit damage necklace because your crit damage necklace gives you 65% of crit damage. But the thing is, rings and boots don't give you crit damage as their main stats, which means you can only get your crit damage out of your neck, right? And your ring and boot has to be focused on attack percent. So compared to the above build 1, where necks, rings, and boots could be pretty interchangeable, here you can't mix them up. Again, artifact recommendation is same as above. Now let's see the total stats that you get out of without substats. You get 3.2k attack, 8.2k HP, so significantly lower HP, 142 speed, higher speed, defense same, have higher crit chance and higher crit damage, effectiveness the same. Now, this build is used for PvE and PvP multi-purposes, and thus it's slightly more difficult to reach the required stats. Speed 150 is the minimum that we thought was required to use for multi-purposes. And once again, Vanguard's artifact damage scales with attack stats, so we invest in attack. Crit chance, crit damage effect are all required, unlike build 1. So this build is probably a bit more trickier to reach. Now let's go into specific stats. We want you to aim for at least 3.6k attack. HP could be higher, but again, we wouldn't put emphasis on it at this point. Speed 150. As I mentioned earlier, we consider this to be the minimum speed that you need for it to be usable. Defense, same. 85% crit chance, so we thought you need pretty high crit chance. And 260% crit damage minimum. Again, 55% effectiveness. As you can see here, this requires you to pick up on a lot of substats that you didn't have to care about in build 1. So for attack, it's the same. You need about 7% attack substats per piece. Speed 1 per piece. By this, I mean try to go over 150, okay? I think it's always better to go over 150. Now, crit chance can be pretty demanding. 10% crit chance substats per piece, 9% crit damage, and 6% effectiveness per piece. You probably noticed that the most demanding of these 5 is the crit chance 10% per piece. But again, because you have other pieces where you can make up for it, again, this is an average. This is not what each piece has to have, right? So, one additional recommendation that I would have for the second build is if you can have slabs of HP on your items, bringing this up to 10k, that would be wonderful. But again, I wouldn't push it, but because these days in RTA, PvE, PvP, defensive stats seem to come in so handy in all situations, it's always safe to have a little bit of HP and defense. So that's all for today. With the help of Leo, we went through an in-depth guide of how to build Seaside Bologna. We went through stat analysis. We recommended 2 builds specifically. We also recommended a couple of artifacts that go well with her. And most importantly, and we hope this is the most handy part for you, we provided goal stats and substats per piece so that you can have a rough sense of what gear you want to keep, what gear you want to throw out for SSB. This is going to be a series, meaning that we have a lot of other character in-depth builds coming up. For now, for example, we have Charles in mind, Champion Zorado in mind. We have a lot. So we hope this was helpful to your purposes, and we hope you build a wonderful seaside Bologna. Memento out. Bye.